Moroccans go to the polls in regional elections, seen as a test of the ruling party's leadership. It will also show the king's plan for more regional autonomy is working. But for a country which has largely escaped the violent consequences of the Arab Spring, will it continue to stay peaceful despite the regional turmoil? This is a special inside story. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Inside Story from the Moroccan capital, Rabat. Voters here have cast a ballot in local and regional elections. It will be seen by many as a test of the popularity for the ruling Justice and Development Party, which has been in power since 2011 after winning a large mandate following popular protests. But Morocco has been something of an anomaly in this region, despite the political turmoil across much of North Africa and the Middle East. It's been relatively calm here. There's even a talk of Moroccan exceptionalism. So how has the country managed to escape the consequences of the Arab Spring? And has life got better for millions of Moroccans? We'll get to our guests joining us here in Rabat in a moment. But first, here's what's at stake. It's a ballot Moroccans hope will delegate more power to local government. Under proposals, each community will have a local self-governing authority responsible for its own budget. People here say they are fed up with their lives being run by politicians based in the capital.
Our politicians care only about themselves and making money. That's completely insane. It has to stop. We need change.
Morocco has been struggling with poverty, unemployment and corruption for years. The new local councils are seen as the best way to encourage people to take part in how things are run.
Regional councils are a good alternative. People are now saying they will vote for a candidate with a good record and, above all, who is not corrupt.
The elections, though, could be undermined if voters stay away from polling stations. High turnouts are rare in Morocco.
These elections will serve as a kind of barometer that will allow the regime to measure the level of trust in the whole reform process that is underway since 2011.
2011 was the year when mass demonstrations spread across the Arab world, calling for democracy and change, the so-called Arab Spring. A new constitution was adopted in Morocco, and the conservative Justice and Development Party won the elections the same year. A process many believe helped the country weather the storm that engulfed the region. This is a contest between two main parties, the conservative Justice and Development and the secular Authenticity and Modernity. Neither is expected to win a majority, so it remains to be seen whether Morocco's arch rivals can set their differences aside and form a coalition. Joining us now are our guests, Rachid Touhtou, researcher in social and political science, Mohammed Al-Hashmi, professor at Agadir University, and Idriss Maghraoui, professor at Al Akhawain University in Iran. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for joining us. Let me start by asking you, Mr. Rachid Touhtou, why should Moroccans care about these elections in particular?
Yeah, I think the 2015 communal and regional elections are a major turning point in the history of the political landscape in Morocco. Bearing in mind that it's in post-Arab Spring and it's in post-2011 referendum on the Moroccan constitution. They should take care about these elections as they are a real testing of the projects in local developments.
Before we get to that particular point, Mohammed Al-Hashmi, can we explain this whole project to the international audience, regional councils? Are we talking about some sort of local governments that are going now to run their own affairs?
Yes, thank you. This is one of the new reforms that were introduced by the Constitution of 2011, and also the law on advanced regionalization, what is called, referred to in Morocco as regionalization, advanced regionalization. And according to the provisions of this new law and to the provisions of the relevant constitutional text, the Moroccan electorate will be able to elect the presidents of regions in a universal suffrage. So this is the first time in Morocco that the Moroccan electors are enabled to have a kind of impact, direct impact on the local public policy.
Idris, Mr. Idris Maghraoui, are we talking about delegating some power to regional authorities? Are we talking about decentralization? Are we talking about Morocco giving more autonomy to regions? So the capital, in a way or another, won't be pretty much involved in those local politics?
I think when talking about the current elections in Morocco, there are potentially two lenses through which we can look at it. One is what you're talking about in terms of what sometimes is called devolution and the regional aspects by giving autonomy. And this is certainly a very positive thing. So it's sort of an optimistic lens. There are a number of different things that are associated with these elections. The fact that Moroccans now use their national card to vote, as opposed to previous forms of elections which were open to corruption. The fact that there is a kind of tutelage on the part of the current government on the functioning of the elections, and this is all positive thing. There is another positive thing about the current elections, the fact that they have opened space for more women to participate in. So when you look at it from this typically technical perspective, and I would say narrow perspective, certainly it is a very positive thing.
Okay. And if you talk also, let's see it from a political perspective, Rashid. We're talking about now giving voice to those who were voiceless in the past. People have been saying that we've been discriminated against. The political elite based in Rabat was the one to take final decisions. Now, for the first time, we're going to see people in suburban areas, in rural areas, taking their own fate into their own hands. Is this something significant thing in Morocco?
In the new legal framework, this is true, theoretically, but practically, and as an observer, sociologically speaking, Moroccans have been voting since independence. There are three major problems within local elections in Morocco. The first challenge is for the regime is the turnout. So a lot of Moroccans should go to the ballot in order to legitimize the sustainability of the regime. The second challenge is the sociological relationship between people and their political parties. Locally speaking,
a trust deficit.
Yeah, there is a problem of trust. So people, when they vote, there is a personalized voting because we know the person, there is blood relationship with the person, or there is kinship relationship. So the same sociological aspects of the election throughout history are still omnipresent in the same elections. What has changed is the legal framework. That's I agree.
I got your point.
Yeah.
Mohammed, turnout. Historically speaking, turnouts were never high in Morocco. I mean, do you think that people are pretty much determined to go in huge numbers, express their voices in these elections?
Yeah, I think that there is a kind of peculiarity that is local elections have compared with the legislative elections is that the decision to vote depends largely on the relationship between the electorate and the candidates. So that's why I expect the turnout to be higher than the previous legislative elections. But the question whether it will be higher than the previous local elections held in 2009 or not. This is the main question. I want just to go back to what was said about the legal framework. I think that when we read the main laws that laid the groundwork of these elections, it seems that these laws are consistent with the approach that was adopted over the last 4 years in the
You're
whole.
referring to 2011, when thousands of Moroccans took to the streets, said, we want change, we want political reforms. King of Morocco said, I got the message, let's reform the constitution, let's start from scratch. And 4 years later, we have these elections. But this autonomy, Mr. Maghraoui, given to regions, is this something which is going to further consolidate democracy in Morocco, or it might just pave the way for further problems because corruption is widespread and people are saying this could be just used by these regional councils away from the monitoring of the government and they'll do whatever they want to do?
Honestly, the question of democracy in Morocco depends on structural issues. And what I mean by structural issues, I mean a more democratic constitution, a stronger political parties, and real institutionalization of democracy. If you look at the question of regionalization and devolution, historically they have worked much more in sound democracies, and they have been a fiasco in non-democratic political system. So the question of regionalization, if it is not accompanied by a strong democratic institution that deal with structural problems, and some of these structural problems, as I mentioned, are honestly very weak political parties that are not willing to provide alternative, a political leadership that is honestly not to the level of real political leadership, and a number of different problems that have to do with corruption, but what I consider structural issues, and within which the question of devolution that we are speaking here becomes much more effective.
I have to say that I was talking to people on the ground in polling stations, and one of the things that was recurring again and again, basically people saying that we really don't trust our political elite. Is this a factor that is going to play out into the outcome of these elections?
Yes, sure, because the Moroccans have a long history with vote buy-in, so from the 60s basically up until now. And also I talked to people in different cities and in neighborhoods, and people now in the morning, they refuse to go to the ballot and waiting for who is going to give more money. So it's a negotiated bargain. So a lot of people I talked to on the phone, they say, we are waiting who is going to give me more money so that I can go. So vote buying is a fact, and it has been throughout all the electoral processes we witnessed in Morocco. So this is a factor that has weakened the electoral process. Also, there is one problem, and here I comment on Professor Maghraoui, is that if the regionalization, or what we call now autonomy, didn't succeed in this post-elections, and especially bearing in mind that the south of Morocco should have a real autonomy, because this is Morocco has signed this with international actors, and there is a negotiation about the problem
talking
in
about
the
issue
Sahara.
of Western Sahara and Morocco,
and also just one
proposing
point,
autonomy as the best way out of the long-standing
one
problem.
point is that people don't trust the elections or the outcome of the elections, because they think and they have the experience that you vote or you don't vote, nothing is going to change locally.
Mohammed, people here analysts, people involved in politics say, we admit we don't have a perfect political law or establishment, but at least we always manage to go smoothly and weather storms that have engulfed the region. Look at the map. Violence, instability, civil wars in different places, peace and stability in Morocco.
Yes, this is one of the main points through which the incumbent government has tried to justify the way, namely PJD, the way they lead.
PJD being the ruling party of justice and development, led by Prime Minister.
Yeah, exactly. The way they are ruling the country over the last 4 years. But the problem, as Dr. Maghraoui said, is whether these elections will help in advancing the democratic process in Morocco. I think everything depends on the way the current government and other political stakeholders will try to strike a right balance between the vital need for this country to stability and the necessity to push forward the democratization process.
All right. Mr. Maghraoui, in the West, people go to the polls. Parties sometimes get landslide majorities or a comfortable majority, which is never going to be the case in Morocco. Morocco, there's neither party, particularly the two biggest parties, are going to get a majority, which means that we are braced for a coalition. Is a coalition a good thing for Morocco?
Well, coalitions are always possibilities in Morocco because, honestly, if we go back to the structural issues that I have talked about, theoretically we can divide the Moroccan political context into what I would call the state and the government, in the sense that the state where power is concentrated and the government is the managerial component of politics. Otherwise, the political parties and the parliament, but the state, otherwise the monarchy and the closest circle of power is what I would consider the state. And within this kind of framework, honestly, any kind of alliances can occur, in the sense that, for example, in the previous elections, we have seen some unexpected alliances because of all sorts of different machinations and things like that. Because in reality, in Morocco, power does not reside within the government, but within the state. And within this context, there are all sorts of formal and informal ways by which this system is sustained. So in a sense, what I would, about elections, are what I would call a democratic instrument for sustaining an undemocratic system. Because power does not necessarily rely in the parliament or within the parties as we see them today.
It's important, very interesting to see in the Arab world post the Arab Spring. This never before has polarization been pronounced, that it is now between the seculars, so-called secular, and the conservatives or the Islamists, which is exactly the case here now in Morocco between the Justice and Development or PJD and the Authenticity and Modernity Party, known here as PAM. This political divide or polarization, is it something healthy for Moroccan political establishment, or is it just going to further undermine the political process?
The fragmentation within the political landscape has always been the case, and that's for the regime continuity. So all the three kings, Muhammad V, Hassan II, and this actual king has always played on this fragmentation within the political landscape in order to, as we say, to divide and conquer. So in the 70s we witnessed a lot of, so the leftists' discourse was very dynamic, and then the regime encouraged the Islamists to invade the public sphere. Now the same in post-2011, and what we call the newcomer in the political science literature in Morocco, which is PAM, was born out from the palace. So it's the friend of the king who founded this party, and just in a fortnight it has the first rank in the last election, in 2000 elections. And I think they got more than 6,000 seats in local communes. And the PJD got around 1,500. So this fragmentation is a reality of the political system in Morocco. But the winner in this case is the regime continuity and the capacity of the regime to co-opt leaders from all around the political landscape.
Mohammed, are we going to end up having two blocks in Morocco? The seculars versus the Islamists or the conservatives?
I think that to answer your question about polarization, my question in order to answer this question is what this polarization is about. If the polarization is about ideas, competing programs, and political platforms, so it may be healthy for the country. This is very clear. But the problem is that in the Moroccan context, in the post-Arab Spring era, the political discourse has reached an unprecedented degree of populism from both sides, from Islamic side and from the other political parties. And this may not be healthy for the future of the political system as a whole and for the credibility of political parties. We may end up by two big camps, political camps, but the question remains, what is the difference between these two competing camps, two competing groups?
Mr. Maghraoui, on the other hand, you have those who would say that in an emerging democracy, this is how things work out. Multi-party system, different parties competing with different ideologies, and then after a certain level of maturity, it boils down to two blocks like in different places in the advanced world. And the two blocks are the basic tenets of a real democracy. So people, when they go to the poll, they know exactly if it's not A, it should be B.
Multi-party system is certainly a healthy thing for democracy, but to a certain extent, in the sense that when you have 30 different parties, and as I clearly stated, very weak political parties, I'm speaking about parties that are unable to propose alternatives. A democratic context is a context where there is a discourse and a counter-discourse in order to reach somewhere in the middle, some form of decision. In the Moroccan political context, political parties are have sort of lost their independence, and they are unwilling to provide that alternative that is healthy for a democratic system of rule. And I think this is why ultimately I think the consolidation of 3 or 4 strong political parties, and I insist on strong and independent political parties, will be healthy for a Moroccan democracy in the long term in order to ask and request more constitutional reforms and a stronger democratic context.
Gentlemen, I have less than 2 minutes and I would like to ask you the same question for the three of you. And can you just please answer me briefly? How do you see the future of Morocco?
Yeah, I am very optimistic in the sense. So, but optimism means that we should have a real democracy, and the only entry to democracy is through parliamentarian monarchy.
Mohammed?
I have to be optimistic, of course, but I think that the situation that triggered the youth protests in 2011 are still there. And unless the elections are organized in a way to push forward the democratic process in Morocco, I think that there is still a risk for the Moroccan third way strategy.
Mr. Maghraoui?
I'm also optimistic, but I'm optimistic in a context where we really start seeing real parties with a strong agenda and an independent, coherent project around which Moroccans can unite. So I am hopeful for Morocco.
Gentlemen, quite interesting to listen to you talking about Morocco and the transition to democracy and the hopes of millions of people about a better future. And thank you for watching. If you have any comments about today's show, you can visit our program page at aljazeera.com. You can also post your comments on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also tweet us at AJ Inside Story. From me, Hashim Ahbar, and the whole team here. Bye for now.